Backwoods brothers, welcome to another episode. Sorry we are a little bit late today, but I want to...
but what's my name?
I'm getting to it. I want to apologize for being late, for breaking the show. Technical difficulties. So, let's try it again. Hey, Joel here with Backwoods brothers.
And Tony. Hey guys, we're so excited. Yes, as Joel said, my broski, sorry that we're late, but you know what? Sometimes the best things in life are worth waiting for. Like our guest who's on our show today. He is I want to rehearse this. Gresham Association Police Officer. His name is Tommy.
Yes.
And I know I just messed it up, so you're going to keep me straight,
That's
right, Tommy?
totally fine, yes.
Okay, but we're glad to have you at the table today.
I'm glad to be here. You said that if there were technical difficulties, it would be a good show.
Yes, I did.
So, so far, I think we're off to a good start.
Yes, and we're just learning that Tony is Lex Dixon.
No, Tommy, you said something about working your life and everything working in your life up to a certain point.
Everything that I have done
yeah.
up to this point, everything that I've worked for in life, it's led to this moment right here. I've been preparing my entire life to be on Backwoods Brothers. I didn't know it at the time, but here I am.
You know what? We have your money off camera, but thank you for saying
yes.
that.
Thank you for the official, officially unofficial endorsement.
Absolutely, yes.
J-Man, did you want to give an endorsement before we get started?
Yes. Right off the bat here, I want to give an endorsement, and that is going to be to our wonderful, brand new, just entered officially into the race, governor candidate Stan Pulliam.
Excellent.
Right. I'm officially endorsing him as a Backwoods brother.
Yes.
As a city councilor.
Yes.
And as, just a husband and a father and a family man and Estacadian and Oregonian.
Yeah.
And a veteran. And what else can I add in here?
Man, yeah. It's quite the list.
I didn't know he was a veteran.
No, I'm a veteran.
Oh, you're endorsing him as a veteran.
I'm just saying he's getting lots of different endorsements out of me from different angles.
Excellent. Yes. Speaking of that, he was on the show a couple of episodes back, but we've done 17 already. So I don't know what episodes you might have to look on with the mayors, but he was on.
I don't know what episode that was.
I think it was episode.
It was a couple months ago.
1 through 17, somewhere in there.
Somewhere, yeah.
So just look at that. You'll find out. Also, like, share, and subscribe. We also would love for you to interact with us. So jump online. Get your friends' and your cousins and your mothers to jump online. We are definitely looking for a great show today with your involvement. Don't forget to check out backwoodsbrothers.com for some merch. We want those things to go off the shelves and some new shirts that we just posted this last week. Don't forget the cup. Everybody gets a cup who comes on the show.
Everybody loves the cup who comes on the show.
Right?
Yeah, and so the cup is actually... comes with this. We make the cup with a sticker. That's made by one of our sponsors, Whitney Signs. And we have tested this thing. I've tested it in the microwave. I've tested it in the dishwasher. I've scrubbed it with like hard stuff on the sink. Hasn't moved, come off, or anything else. It's a serious.
It's legit.
It's a serious sticker.
Legit, yeah.
You might be able to hold up like a building or something with this thing.
Yeah,
really?
I can see that.
Well, don't try it at home.
Don't recommend it.
Yeah. Don't try it at home, Tommy.
I thought we keep the shelf up.
All right.
Safety first, right?
Which, by the way, it is how we keep the shelf up behind us.
Yes.
But let's talk about the shelf for a second.
Oh, yes.
Last show, we did a ceremony for the 13 Fallen.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
And really, it's for everybody, all fallen, but this one represents the 13.
Yep.
And so we gave a salute, we raised the beer up, we named them all out. And so, and we've said, and we've committed, this is going to stay up here for every show going forward.
Awesome. Yes, and that was show 16. So check out the show before this one to check out that ceremony. It definitely will leave you contemplative and thinking deeply.
So we want to tell you the real reason why Tommy's here. It's because my man over here is actually on probation. And he isn't allowed to be out of his sight.
No, he did not call him the black man. The black man's on probation. I get it.
No. He can leave my sight. He just can't go within 50 feet of a Chuck E. Cheese.
I want to be clear. It's not kids. It's the Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, exactly.
See how they ganged up on me?
Yeah.
I think that's police brutality.
Yeah, maybe. Just maybe. Yes.
We're going to be talking about those things today, too.
Excellent.
Bum,
Good.
bum, bum.
Yes.
But no, we're so excited to have you on the show. Can I
glad to be here.
Ask you questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Let us get to know you. We want to know you. So How did you come into policing? How did you, because you've been in it for many years. This is not, you're a sergeant.
Yep.
So how did you work your way up? How did
Sure.
it begin for you?
Yeah, so I started my career 17 years ago in the city of Seattle. What really got me into policing was my father. He was a police officer for 29, almost 30 years. I was really fortunate. I got to watch him growing up every day, going to work, coming home, liking his job. He never seemed bored. He always, he never got bored with it. He always enjoyed what he did. And so that's what really kind of drew me to law enforcement. For the longest time, I wanted to be a music teacher. And I had the opportunity to do it, and I hated it. It was awful.
You had an opportunity to be a music teacher?
Yeah. I taught band at Centennial High School, where I graduated from years ago.
Are you a tromboner?
No.
So this guy.
I don't
I can't do anything.
Can't do anything.
I played trombone.
Oh, excellent.
Myself, so
Yeah, good for you.
from middle school, I can't. I always felt like I was carrying like a bazooka.
Of course, yeah. That's kind of cool.
These days, you carry that to school. You
get
dive to the side
you'd be
of the
done,
hallway.
you know.
But you are musical, and I know you're
Sure.
going to tell that. But
Yeah, so I mean, I got the opportunity. I taught drumline for a couple years. I like playing music. I don't like teaching music, and so I realized I was like, man, I need to divert quickly. It was kind of funny because I had never been on a ride along. I had never handled a gun. I had never done any of like the cop things that you think that like growing up in a law enforcement family. I had never done any of those things, and it was hilarious because my dad was like, "Why don't you go on a ride along?" So I went on a ride along, and it immediately changed the trajectory of my life. I went out. I was in love with it instantaneously. I joined a cadet post when I was younger, and then got to do a lot of ride-alongs, got a lot of training and that sort of thing, and then I ended up. When I turned 21, I ended up applying for the Seattle Police Department, and then I never looked back.
real fast, how did your dad, being a police officer himself, how did he shield you so well to not even experience some of those things that he's experienced?
My dad, he's always had like a ton of like friends outside of law enforcement, and then also had like he has tons of hobbies. You know what I mean? He's like one of those guys like. Birthdays, Christmas, I never know what to get him because he has absolutely everything. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, it's one of those things where so growing up, you know, camping, motorcycle riding, you know, tinkering with stuff in the garage. I mean, like that's just kind of been our thing. And so, and then he had his cop friends, but he also had like tons of friends outside of law enforcement that, you know, we went camping with and that, you know, would come over for holidays and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, I think that was it. You know, he just kind of, he was really good. He was able to compartmentalize and he was really good at it. He had his work life, he had his home life.
Yes.
And it's a testament to, I will say, he was one of the, like, well, I'm sure we'll get into this later on, but it's like, you have those certain people that you know, like in the community, where it's just kind of like, oh, there's this drama going on with that individual or whatever. Everybody, because I now work at the agency where my father retired from.
Really?
Yeah, but everybody was just like, your dad would like leave the department and he was like home in 10 minutes to be with his family. You know, where other guys would like, they might divert and go to the bar, they might, you know, do, you know, whatever. But he was always just like, he was family man, you know, number one. I think that's the thing too is, yeah, he was, I knew my dad was a police officer, but he was always my dad.
He was always your dad.
Yeah.
So you leave always.
Yeah.
So you leave Seattle.
Well grounded.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You leave Seattle. You go down to Gresham, where you're
at.
Okay. So and your dad also followed. So you're following your dad's footsteps.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow. So tell us about Gresham.
Oh man. So little disclaimer is I'm speaking tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of the Gresham Police Officers Association.
Yes.
So just got to make that clear. But
Before
as far
we get
as
there, I forgot to tell you that.
Yeah.
Your family. You said you're a family man. Say something about your family.
Oh gosh. So I have my oldest daughter. She's 15, and she's a rock star.
Yes.
She's got her first job, and so she's really digging that. Just started school in sophomore year.
Start paying dad back.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's never gonna happen. That would take that would take a lifetime.
That would take a lifetime. With all of us.
And
yes.
At least maybe paying the car insurance would help.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Cell phone bill.
That's the goal.
Yeah. So I guess the cell phone bill
for sure. but like super into dance, really athletic, really intelligent, really good sense of humor. She's a great kid. I met my wife 10 years ago. Started dating, and we've been married. It'll be 8 years actually.
Shout out to
month.
your wife.
Yes,
she's watching tonight.
I'm sure she is.
Yes.
Speaking of watchers, we just got one of our guests wanted to say thank you for your service.
Oh, awesome! Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so and then I have 2 boys, 5 and 3. They are hilarious. It's so funny because like with my kids, they're all. I love them all equally, of course, but they all are like super unique, and it's awesome.
Super unique, and you love going fishing with them, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. My son just caught his first fish, his first rainbow trout at Estacada Lake. He'd probably want me to broadcast that on
Was
the show.
it this big?
Every time he tells the
big?
story, yes.
Oh, it gets bigger.
Yes, of course. He's a true fisherman. Every single time he tells a story, it grows at least, however many inches, whatever. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of the opposite here. When we first started the show, this thing was about 10 feet tall.
Okay.
And now it's shrinking little by little.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Coming down the wall.
Right on. Yep. I love it.
It's getting closer to Tony. I think he's making more nervous.
Right, sniffing over my shoulder here.
Yes.
So, Gresham. Mm-hmm. So you're speaking on behalf of...
Yeah, so I'm the president of the Gresham Police Officers Association. But I can definitely speak to certain things within the city. But as far as like working, I've really enjoyed my time there. I've been there almost 15 years now. We're definitely going through the growing pains. I think like any organization, especially law enforcement organization, we're all experiencing the same thing, of course, over the last couple of years with all the civil unrest. We have a new administration coming in. We have new city management. We have a lot of people, like tenured people, that are really kind of soul searching and deciding, do I stay in law enforcement? Do I leave? Do I go to a different agency? Do I go to a different state? I've certainly struggled with those things, but I was born and raised in Gresham. I still have friends and family that live there. I'm still we have challenges like anybody else, but I'm still very happy with the city and with the department, and so I will stay. I will, regardless. If that ship sinks, I will go
with it.
Yep, I will go with it.
Even though you're not going to really go down, you're just going to fight till the end.
Absolutely, yes. So, but I think that we have, with those growing pains and with those things that I mentioned, I will say that it is positive in the sense that like we just hired a chief who I'm very happy with. He's awesome. A really good guy. My dealings with the city manager at this point, I'm very impressed. She's younger, she's energetic. She actually wants to be seen with us and like have her picture taken with us, which is kind of nice. It's a departure from what we've dealt with over the last couple of years.
Yes, Joel,
So I'm really kind of hoping that we've been at odds, obviously, because of some things that have been going on, obviously the political climate, but I think that we're kind of starting to work our way back towards, normal, whatever that looks like.
Wow. Yeah.
So we're getting there.
We're going to ask you about the normal.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things you said, but I'm going to give Joel a chance to step in.
Well, I actually did a job shadow, six weeks of job shadow when I was younger, about 16, 18, something like that. And I rode with a couple of police officers out of Gresham for I think it was like every other day or so.
Oh, right on. Excellent.
Yeah. So, and I just got a chance to kind of see if it's something I wanted to do and stuff. And obviously, in life took me different ways.
Yeah.
So, but so I got a chance to kind of see in the same department you're in now.
Yes.
Too, because it's been out for like 20-some odd years now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so I got a chance to kind of ride and see what you guys do out throughout the day. And
wow.
So, and it was just right before you got there, I believe. So.
Yeah. Would have been. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of nostalgic to have you out here and things, and so.
Awesome.
It was some things going on in Gresham. It's been a little hard to kind of watch some of the things going on in Gresham, and I'm sure it's been hard on you guys. And and so I'm glad you're able to stick in there. I know a lot of law enforcement has decided to step aside. I think one of the big questions has been on a lot of people's minds, and I want to bring up something that's been actually right out of Jefferson County is those law enforcement that's actually in firefighters are suing the governor for the vaccine mandates.
Yes.
Now, if you don't mind, I just kind of want to see from a police officers association representative, kind of where the officers stand on that in the area, what you can speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, So I was one of the first people. I was one of the first law enforcement officers in the state to get the jab. I don't regret doing it. My motivation, as I said before, I'm very close with my family. They were pretty nervous about the virus, and so when I had the opportunity to get it, to get the shot, I got the shot. And so in terms of like what we're dealing with and where everybody else is at, we're really kind of split down the middle. In terms of the vaccinated within our organization, we're at about, I believe we're something like 30, 40%, somewhere in there. We definitely have people that feel strongly about it. It's kind of the unique situation about, being in public service is that, and I don't care if you're like working at the grocery store or if you're working in the ER, like we're getting exposed to this constantly. I mean, every time we go on a call, dispatch does the best that they can to like screen, and ask like, are you COVID positive? Are you having these symptoms? Blah, 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 blah. But the thing is that you can't account for everything. And so we've had a lot of our members become ill with the virus, some worse than others. I had one friend of mine who recently got back to work, and he's like, I thought I was going to die. Like he was literally having conversations with his wife away from his kids where he was like really concerned. We've had other people where it was like, they had like a slight cough, maybe a little bit of a runny nose. They tested positive for it. And so I think the biggest thing right now is that we have a lot of people that have natural immunity to this, and because they've had it and they've recovered, and so they are reluctant to get a vaccine for it. We have some people that could care less. We have other people on the other side of the aisle that are like, everybody needs to get the shot. So I think that the thing that I've tried to do the most is like not necessarily sway people one way or the other to get the vaccine. What I try to do, especially as union president, is give them information. Like if the city's going to, like I deal with a lot of, so as a union president, I'm dealing with labor law, right? And so I can talk about things like the impacts and the effects of the vaccine, when we get it, where we get it, who gives it to us, do we get time off, if it makes us sick, who pays for the time off, all that kind of stuff. To go a step further, what I end up doing is you kind of do the deeper dive into what does case law say about this? What have cities and local governments done in the past? I mean, in this, what's interesting or fascinating to me, I kind of nerd out on this stuff, but it's like, this goes back like 116 years. Yep. In terms of like the case law and this being tried in the courts and what businesses.
Taken back to San Francisco, correct?
Yeah. Yep. And so there's just a lot of well-established case law. So communicating that to people and letting them know like, hey, if this takes effect, this is what the state is hanging their hat on, and this is what it's based upon.
Well, the thing, there's been case law on both
Sure.
sides, and so it just kind of from state to state.
Right.
By the way, another note come in says thank you for keeping Gresham safe for us all.
Right on. Excellent.
Absolutely. But so as far as case law, there is case law that has supported the right of the government to respond to a pandemic.
For sure.
But there's also case law that limits the term in which and how that has to be proceeded.
Yes.
And that there's actually in our Constitution there's actually a requirement that for them to proceed forward they actually have to provide an evidentiary justification for their actions.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the big things that a lot of cities that are crying out there for is that they've requested this evidence to show that their actions are just for what they're doing.
Right.
That they have the standing on a legal basis in order to move forward with continuing us in a pandemic or an emergency basis, but they're not providing that. They're just going forward. Yeah, and that kind of takes them out of the just side of things, and it kind of starts moving them into a more of a totalitarian dictatorship. Sure, by using an emergency basis and emergency powers and not letting them go. Yeah. And so that's kind of where a lot of the arguments starting to come in.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, but yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that after we go to our break, which we started a little bit late, so we're going to give an extra 5 minutes before we go to our break. But cool. So
there's another topic. I'm going to just jump off of that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
I have a friend who is in law enforcement down south in Oregon.
Okay.
And I did a ride along with him, and in his charting, that he has to do, and I don't know if you have to do the same thing, but in his charting, they added a little piece. If he's going on a traffic stop, he has to type in what he suspects or expects that person's race to be.
Yes, it's called stop data collection.
Stop data collection.
Yes, and
why is that there?
So that was a law that was passed within the last, year or two.
I thought it was since George Floyd, wasn't it? Or
I believe that was pre
George Floyd.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it was pre. You know what's interesting is that, so going back like several years. So when I first came to Gresham, we had every single time we'd clear a traffic stop or subject stop, we would have to do that, and that was years ago, long before it was mandated.
Really?
And then we went away from it for a long time, and then now, it's state law. So we keep track of all that data.
Is that tracking going somewhere to create some type of outcome? I mean, if you're collecting that data, is it to, and you know what I'm getting at?
I think so, yeah.
Is it serving a purpose?
Yes. That's kind of so obviously what they want to do is they want to be able to show like whether or not cities or organizations are engaging in any type of, bias policing or racial profiling.
Exactly.
Interestingly enough, when Gresham got their numbers back, and these are from the state, these are not like, ours was like down the line. It was completely even Steven, like across the board. Like there was no like.
Well, my question is,
Sure.
Does the state take into consideration if maybe there's a higher populace of of black people or not? So if you happen to be stopping more black people and you have a higher population of that, they can go, oh look, you're being racially profiled, and that's what's messed up. Is it's not taking full context.
They're taking their data off of assumption or a perception. So the way you perceive before you actually engage.
Well, and that's the tough thing though too, is there's nothing. I mean, from the way that I've dealt with this, it's kind of like one of those things where it's like I can't perceive anything, especially like in the middle of the night while I'm driving down the road. I can't, like I know that I can perceive that somebody's committed a traffic violation or that they're driving too fast or whatever. In terms of like race, gender, age, it's anybody's
short
guess.
of them flying by you or something like that.
Yeah, especially, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Blur column.
yeah, exactly. Unknown.
Unknown.
You know what I mean?
Do they have an unknown on that charting? I don't think so.
Yes, yeah, they do.
They do have an unknown.
Especially like for gender, they have an unknown, and So, unknown. And so it's just it's tracking. It's just kind of so there's a lot of things too. I mean, so you can talk about stop data collection. You can talk about use of force rates. It's like, okay, well, you've had so many uses of force like in the last month. Well, it could just be that it was a crazy month, and it just happened to be that way.
Right.
Or, like I work in kind of a rough area. I work in the middle of the night. There's a ton of bars like in the area. There's a lot of drugs in the area. There's all these different factors. It doesn't, unfortunately, these systems are created it's my perception these systems are created by people that have very little understanding of what we do.
Right.
Well,
you know what I mean?
The DOJ is something that I know that gets a lot of these data reports, and they release all these other reports.
Sure.
But they never take the holistic approach to it, looking at everything.
Yeah.
And those reports are constantly used on news and by other people, and they're quoted and stuff.
Right.
But like again, they're not taking. That's why I came back to that. When I went to school for criminal justice, that's where I learned about the DOJ and the reports, and learned about victimology and criminology and all the other type of stuff there. And to look at the holistic picture, and it just so often people don't look at that whole picture to try to take in the consideration of what's there. Right. They pick out their data, and then they target police and not victims. So they demonize police officers. Oh, well, this person was they stopped him because he's a black guy, and they have high numbers of stopping black people. Well, if you're in an area with if you're patrolling a neighborhood of that's highly populated
of black people,
and that has a high crime rate, and the person was committing a crime and has a history of committing crime. A lot of cases aren't taken into consideration until after the fact. When it all comes down, at that point, there's been so much damage at that point.
Sure.
So can you speak a little bit about that and how officers kind of deal with that type of thing? Because that's got to be running through their head on a normal basis.
Well, especially now. I mean, I think that what you've seen, especially like in the Portland metro areas, you've seen like a lot of depolicing. Now, not only did you have calls to defund the police, and you had agencies that, like Portland Police Bureau, I think cut their budget by like $18 million. They broke up the gun violence reduction team. All that kind of stuff. And so now, you're literally, Portland is, they have surpassed, I believe they've surpassed their record this year alone.
Yep.
In homicides, in shootings.
Aren't they like vying for the spot of like the national highest?
Oh heck yeah! I mean, per capita for sure.
Yeah.
And what a reward.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the thing is that's the other part of it too, is it's like, especially with the gang violence reduction team, those guys and gals that were on that team, they were phenomenal.
Yeah.
They knew all the players. They knew who was out there, doing all the dirt. And, so now, like, there's no lid on any of that stuff. But they knew these people. They knew their families. Like, and they had rapport with people. I think a lot of what you're seeing right now is retaliation, for, crimes of the past. And that's having an impact, especially in the city of Portland. But the thing is, it's in Gresham, it's in Beaverton. I mean, you turn on the news, it's happening everywhere. And so in terms of like the depolicing, that's a horrible jacket to have if you're being accused of being a racist, and so that's on everybody's mind. Nobody wants to be called that. It's like the worst thing you can be called.
Wasn't there even an attempt to try to like disarm the police and just, I saw something.
Chicago, actually.
No, we're here in Portland.
No, but Chicago actually, today there was a report of them taking rifles out of.
So, and then there's another. So outside of Chicago, there's a city where I believe that they're attempting to disarm their police force, and then here in Portland, the PSU campus. I know that there was an effort there. Mm-hmm. They were going forward with it, but I think that this year it's actually going to happen, where they're going to disarm their campus police.
Based on what data is that successful?
But that's just it. Is it's like nobody's. I don't know how you're going to maintain. Well, I don't know how you're going to be able to operate in that realm.
Portland is being operated like the Biden administration, complete and utter failure of leadership from top down, because the leadership should be stepping up and using good science and good data, and not playing a political game when it comes to law enforcement. They under the current leadership there, they have fallen to one of the highest crime rates. Mm-hmm. The population has literally scrambled out of Portland as fast as they can. Housing values have dropped. The businesses have left the area. Mm-hmm. They've lost large manufacturers, or jobs are dropping and leaving the area. But they keep marching in the same way. What kind of future do you see for law enforcement dealing with that going forward?
It's tough because the thing is and it was the same way in Seattle. You have such a large organization and so much that happens that it, like I said, it just works its way out to all the other areas. But the thing is, like, I know people that work in more rural areas, even out here in Clackamas, where it's like, no, we're going to prosecute crime. We're going to hold people accountable. We do have jail space. We're kind of in the middle. Sometimes I just feel like we're in the middle of some kind of strange experiment, and I don't know when it's going to end. And I don't know, you know what I mean? I just don't know. Yes. I don't know what the end game is or what the end goal is. I don't get it.
Yeah.
We're going to go to break here in just a minute. And when we get back, I'm going to give you some views I have on where we're marching.
Sure.
Yeah. Before we do that too.
Yeah.
I want to actually definitely get into a story that will explain the thumbnail that you guys are going to see on our Facebook page and our YouTube. So there's a personal story to what you were talking about the troubles in Portland.
Exactly. So I definitely want to make sure we bring that up. So after we get back, again, story, maybe a little bit more of what we might be marching into.
Sure, absolutely.
And then we'll go from there. So you guys, we'll see you after about 5 minutes or so, and stick around.
All right.
Awesome.
Welcome to Backwoods Minute. This is Amy, and I am so glad you are here with us today. Author Victoria Erickson said, "If you inherently long for something, become it first. If you want gardens, become the gardener. If you want love, embody love. If you want mental stimulation, change the conversation. If you want peace, exude calmness. If you want to fill your world with artists, begin to paint. If you want to be valued, respect your own time. If you want to live ecstatically, find the ecstasy within yourself. This is how to draw it in, day by day, inch by inch." You know, this quote really made me think a little bit, because especially that little bit about peace. And if you want peace, to exude it. So often I talk about how much I want peace in my world. I'm constantly going. I work 30 miles from where I live, and I spend 2.5 hours a day in my car. And yet I end up being so stressed and such a ball of ugh. I don't ever take those moments to be at peace so that I can have peace. What about you? Are there times that you're like, gosh, I want peace, or I want joy? Are you looking for it? Joy comes when we notice the things around us that bring us joy. Joy comes from noticing that sweet little girl that runs up to you in the middle of the parking lot and gives you the biggest hug before she realizes. How many times have you longed for beauty in your life, and yet you haven't tasted it? But maybe there's something else you can create that is art, and that clay, or my cousin, she does this amazing looking pieces of art that she gets to wear.
Hey guys, we're glad to be back with Tommy. He is a sergeant in our police force in Gresham, and we're excited to have you. So take it away, broski.
So before we left, you were talking about wondering where we are going, and I just watched myself point at the camera, which is hilarious. So you were talking about where you kind of not really sure where we're kind of heading to with all this.
Sure.
And so I wanted to read something.
Okay.
I'm actually going to pull it out here because I do have a computer in front of me. It's amazing.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Computers will show you stuff.
He's going to test us.
No, I'm not going to test you.
Okay, good.
So
test well.
Basically, I'm going to tell a little story.
Okay.
Okay. There was this country that during a period in time, there was this large fire. And what would be their what do you call it? They're kind of like a legislative building.
Okay.
Okay. And the legislative building, prior to there's been some issues with some parties and some attempts at a coup and things. But very mild, didn't actually be successful. But the person who attempted it was now part of this party. And this party, when this fire happened, used the kind of the disaster or the emergency to really push their agenda.
Yeah.
And they use that agenda to kind of shift blame and to identify a group of people and kind of demonize and villainize those people. In the midst of that, by doing that, they were able to kind of break down their opposing political party to them. they just before an election, this they used this fire. This fire happened a few days before election. They used this fire, and they actually got law enforcement to arrest several key members of this political party. Then the election came, and I think there was 81 seats were won for this opposing party, which is pretty much a large group of it. Not the super majority, but it was a pretty big portion of it. Enough where they could pretty much not have a quorum. So what they did is afterward they started arresting and basically banning all of these people. They showed up to take their seat. They were getting arrested because they were supposedly the people that started this fire. Is what they're saying. There's no evidence to it, but they just were accused by their party openly enough where they were able to use law enforcement for it. So from there, because that other opposing party was kind of broken down and pushed out. It kind of made this other party, and the leader of this party was able to kind of rise up a little bit. This other party was able to make themselves kind of like a supreme leader of what's going on, and by that he actually used and made an amendment to their constitution, and by using that, I think it was the 48th Amendment is what it was called. By using that, he was able to use the threat of the fire, the threat of this other party, and the threat of this emergency to actually start to basically using this to remove their civil liberties, such as they were no longer allowed to freely assemble, they were no longer freely speak out, they were no longer allowed to be part of this particular group. And there's a bunch more that they removed from there. So once they kind of removed that there, and they were able to push this party up to the highest level, and I'm basically skipping a lot of minute details.
Of course.
But once they were able to kind of push themselves up to this highest power, this leader was actually able to use this emergency declaration, basically made himself the permanent leader for the next 4 years. And at that point, then he combined what would be a kind of like a co-balance, kind of like England has a prime minister and a queen. He kind of combined these two these two positions into one, basically eliminating all opposition. And at that point, they proceeded to continue to attack this particular party, and by that they basically outlawed and threatened everybody else, and ran into one single party at this point. From there, they used that power at that point to threaten, intimidating, or spoke out against them, and then and just took it further and further and further worse.
Okay.
So, does anything that I've just described there at all sounds anything like we've seen in the last 2 years?
I think I know where you're going with this, and I mean, if you're, well, let me ask you this: what is this comparison specifically?
What I just told you is actually how the Nazi Party came into power.
Sure. Okay. So I think that my take on this is I think that if you go throughout history, if you look at this country, this is history repeating itself. We went through this in the Vietnam War era, where you had a lot of civil unrest. You had, I think, we've been, I don't know if I want to call this, like, we've been engaged in some sort of war in the Middle East for a long time. There's definitely a culture war going on in this country. That's my opinion. That's what I would call it. And I mean, that's what was going on back in the 60s. But the thing is over time, things mellowed out. Things got better. Things became a little bit more conservative, and now we're kind of taking a step backwards. It's interesting because it's like, if you look at the crime bill that Joe Biden was a part of, like, he's completely gone back on that, and now we're basically, in terms of levels of crime, we're like at, like early to mid-90s like levels of crime. This will eventually mellow out, and I think that the difference, though, people have a vote, and they'll be able to. I can't imagine that people are sitting back and looking at all this and going like, "Oh, this is great." You know what I mean?
I think the big difference, though, from what we had during the Vietnam era versus this year is one.
Sure.
We have the perpetual push of social media. We have a heavier incline of like media that came into our war zones.
100%.
we've never, even during the Vietnam when we kind of ran with our tails between our legs and made that mess, we didn't go to the point where we basically screwed our allies so bad that they're openly talking about starting to side with some like China and Russia in those areas.
Sure, but I'll take it a step further, especially with the media piece. Like, could you imagine if that media would have existed back in the 1960s and into the 70s?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Exactly.
And so,
it would have been today what we have
for
then.
sure. And then on top of that, though, like we were like, especially with everything going on, we're like as human beings, I just don't think that we are built to take in this type of media so quickly, so much, inundated constantly.
Chance to process really isn't
Oh,
there.
absolutely.
It makes us more reactionary.
Yes.
And instead of responding with a logical and analytical approach as we used to, we respond with an emotional, reactionary response.
Yes. It's about being
and it's
right.
instantly put out there,
Yes.
and you can't take it back.
Yeah, it's about being right. It's not necessarily about being decent.
That's good.
You know what I mean? And so that's and we've really, we're losing it as a society. That's my feeling.
Yes.
You know,
And
so
it's in that
Sure.
in that area, but in the absence of leadership and order, chaos takes hold.
absolutely, it's a power
And-
vacuum.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
in the sense of chaos,
Sure.
there's always someone that's trying to rise up and control. Correct.
Yeah.
So, and that's actually kind of what happened in this chaos that was. And I'm going to go back to Germany. It happened in China. It happened in Russia.
Sure.
It happened in a lot of places. And I keep
Yep.
using Germany because it was very recent, and it should be fresh in our minds to understand the massive trauma and horror that happened there. And so we should be able to realize that it's something we don't ever want to repeat.
Right.
And so we should be on the lookout for that.
Right.
But the fact is that we've got our eyes so shielded, we're not seeing the bigger picture. And now, are we a carbon copy of what happened there? No. Are we one day going to lead 6 million people off to gas chambers? No. Well, I hope not. I don't know the future. I'm not a.
Sure.
Fortunately.
I understand what you're saying.
But what I'm saying is there is a tyrannical sense of control from a single party that is trying to eliminate the freedoms that we have to put us in that control state, and that is the concern, and what I'm seeing happening.
Sure.
And the same steps.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to, I think, speak out from the show for the last couple months. Would you say, Tony? I've been kind of preaching the same thing. Is
Yes.
Hey, you don't even listen to the words I'm saying. Take a minute, step back from the view. Take a 100-foot view.
Yeah.
Take a 1,000-foot view
Sure.
of what's going on. Look up some history. Learn what you're doing.
Yes.
Ask questions. Simply ask questions, and make sure that what you're doing aligns with your character and your morals and that you really want. So that one day you don't wake up and realize, hey, I was part of a movement that helped lead 6 million people to their death.
Sure.
And theoretically speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I would push back on that somewhat. I think that if you just take a look at, and here's the thing, like, I'm definitely, I am never the smartest person in the room, okay? You know, but I do have,
I'm definitely not myself.
but that's the thing is, like,
That's why I have a
I certainly
Do you see me talking?
well, it's just, I certainly have opinions, that sort of thing, but if you just look at everything that's going on, I don't think, I would hate to think that these people are, like, evil. I just think that they're really incompetent and just really arrogant, which is a horrible combination. And so that's kind of the way I look at it.
Well, do you think that, now, Adolf Hitler aside, he was
Yeah,
an
he's
evil
evil.
person?
Yes.
He was an evil person.
Crazy.
But do you think all the leadership underneath of him was evil, or that they were, one day look back and go, "What the hell did I do?" Some of them might have been evil, yes.
Sure.
But there's more than one evil person than that. But there are some people that I think that were following orders and not at least not following, and that included people that turned in their neighbors.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You've read books on people that have massive regret for that, and so, and like again, the same thing happens in China even today. So let's look at China for now. We're going to skip over off of Germany, because I know that is a sore spot for somebody. I wanted to explain why I've used the word fear in the past, because I'm trying to understand and build a picture for people to understand and see, so that at least they are willing to at least ask the question, try to see what's there, and if they don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine. That's good. But I do know that it's a sore spot for some people, so let's move into another position. Let's look at China.
Okay.
Mao Zedong, Communist Party leader. same approach.
Yep.
The people were originally free. He came in the power of the communist, began to pull the civil liberties, and just kind of followed the same steps.
Yes.
Venezuela, Cuba.
Yeah.
It happened in
Communism bad.
Communism bad.
Yeah.
But even it's communism. The essential piece of communism is people think it's a socialism, but no, communism and even socialism, it relies on having a much lower populace and having a hierarchy
Always.
of people that benefit off of everybody in the lower class.
For sure.
And they're saying, well, capitalism's the same way, you know. Oh, you get those people that are higher up in there. Though capitalism, you have the opportunity to fight your way up. Communism, you do not, because they permanently restrict you. They if you try to move yourself into a higher class, they will jail you, kill you, or just take your stuff.
Sure.
Because your stuff belongs to the government.
Right. Government is God.
Yes, exactly. So, and that's what that's my whole side I'm trying to preach out there is people need to be aware of what's going on and at least have the knowledge so they can make the decisions that they want moving forward.
Sure.
And so I'm telling you this, I'm bringing this up right now, and then I want to move into the story. You got an interesting story to tell here. Most of those cases relies on military and law enforcement to be willing or unwilling participants in this. So in that regards, as a law enforcement officer, how would you perceive the situation? How would you, at what point would you, if this was happening, would you know I'm going with this question.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll leave it right there for you.
We're fortunate in this country we have a constitution. And we have good criminal defense attorneys. We have good civil lawyers. We have good prosecutors. And so we definitely have a system of checks and balances, which gives me hope. I don't always agree with rulings that come out, either from the Ninth Circuit or from the Supreme Court or whatever. I don't always agree, but the thing is, these are people when those decisions are being made and it gets up to that level, that's completely out of my league, and I don't always know all the facts. In terms of the police and how we deal with these types of things, I know that the stance from our city government was, we're not necessarily we'll lead by example if you want us to wear masks, but we're not going to go arrest people for not wearing masks. We're not going to go arrest people for hanging out in the park. If a store calls and says there's people unmasked and they're in our store and they want them removed, we will go assist people out of the store if that's what they want us to do. But that's a private business, and they can do that. As far as, but I will say, having sat back, well, not sat back, but having been involved in this so closely for the last couple of years, and then, having my role, it is difficult to watch when you have small businesses that are being decimated. When people, all they want to do is make an honest living and provide for their families, and they can't do that, they get shut down. And so it's difficult for me to watch as a law enforcement officer, because it's those are the people that we protect everybody, but those are the people that we protect. Those are the people that pay our salaries. Those are the people that show up every day, and produce, And so it is hard when you see that. I definitely feel for those people. And that's another thing, though, too. We had some businesses that were defying the orders, and we would go out and be like, hey, guys, just so you know, this is what's up. This is what the law of the day is or whatever. And then we would leave. You know what I mean? It's just kind of we recognize that there's a constitution. And I mean, it's so funny because it's you'll see clips either on YouTube or on CNN or on Fox or whatever, and you see these cops going out. There was a case in Idaho where they go out and they end up arresting the gal. She was refusing to leave the playground. And I'm just kind of for the love of God. I wish somebody in a position of leadership would have been hey guys, we're not doing this. You know what I mean? But different areas, different policies, different different outcomes, you know.
You didn't expect to be a cop in this day and age, as we say.
No. Like, with everything that's going on, it's kind of like I would have... Like, some guy called in one time. Oh, my gosh. He was like... It comes in as, like, a suspicious call. And so, like, I read the call, and it's like... The clerk at Taco Bell didn't sanitize his card before they handed it back to him. And I'm like... So I call this guy, and I'm like... Okay.
Wait a second. I'm getting a cat out of the tree. Hold on, I'll be right there.
Yeah, or like, no, we have a dead person over here. Like, you know, like, I mean, seriously.
Let me
and I'm
get
like,
to you in a second.
So so I call this guy, and I'm like, what is it that you would like us to do?
Good.
You know, and he's like, well, they could put in special lights. They could use sanitary wipes. They could do, and I'm just kind of like, how about you just don't go there? You realize, like, what Taco Bell is going to do to you, sir. Like, and you're concerned about, like, you know, them handing you your card? You know what I mean? I'm just kind of like, what is going on? But I think what it comes down to,
you can't make this up.
You can't. But also, because this is highly politicized, because especially early on when we just didn't know anything at all, people react in strange ways. Yep. And that was just one account, but it stands out, and I'll never forget it, because I'm like, what am I doing? And then the other thing, too, I'm like, how about you, like, call Taco Bell and tell them that? I don't know. Like, I'm not going to, you know, but once again, I'm just like...
This is not Burger King. You can't have it your way.
Like,
you know?
Absolutely, yes.
Right? I mean, isn't that a borderline, like almost a falling of like a abuse of like the law enforcement system or something? What's that charge?
Yeah, so it's abuse of 911. But it's one of those things. But if they call an emergency, then they can do that all day long.
Yes,
if they want to. So,
right.
But yeah, but the thing is that, and I think, yeah. So did I go out and talk to the clerk?
I really
Taco
hope
Bell?
not.
I did not.
Good.
You know, I was like, buddy,
because you're trying to straighten up shit in Portland, which I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
But I wanted to make sure, Joel, how are you doing on that?
Let me hit a couple comments, and then we'll go right into that.
Awesome.
Because I'd like to kind of end out on this really interesting story that I've heard a little bit about. I haven't actually heard the story.
Okay.
So, comment was the pandemic fear has some people following in lockstep everything Brown orders.
Okay.
It is to the point that if Brown said, pack into boxcars, I'll take you to a shower that will prevent COVID forever, people would follow it.
Sure. Okay.
But let's kind of see what response do you have there, because I've seen that in something. I don't think we're too far from that in some people.
Yeah, I mean, I like, it's so funny because I have friends on both sides of the aisle. Some that, like, I'm pretty middle of the road when it comes to a lot of this. You know, it's like, use your head. You know what I mean? And like I said, kind of going back to what I was talking about a second ago, like, as a supervisor in a law enforcement agency, I'm not going to tell my people to do something that's unconstitutional, that violates the law, that violates policies. Like, I'm not going to...
Okay.
You know, but I understand where they're going with that.
Yeah,
and I understand the frustration, you know, and that people are feeling.
Yeah. Do you feel the tension between a law and a policy?
Sometimes.
Actually, I have a comment that's actually going to touch really close to that. But I'm going to get to this next one, and then we'll get to the last one that's going to touch right on that.
Cool.
And then we'll stop with the comments and go into your story.
Sure.
This is not the one related to that, but the next one will be. Sounds like what Oregon does to the disabled. If you try to make money, they remove all life supports. I've seen that in a lot of cases. Disabled, in a lot of cases, can't make money in most cases. Tony's the exception. He uses his brain, and he does it really well.
He's killing it.
And has a great business here in town, overflowing out the dates, and so which great business. I'd say one of the best counselors, probably in the state of Oregon, if not the Northwest. You guys, if you need to speak to someone, you have to give him a chance. Tony's a man. Plus, he's famous. So
yeah, that's true. Everywhere we go. You know, if you're walking around town, it's like you're a magnet.
A magnet?
Yes.
A magnet for the other eye, because I need one more, hopefully. Thanks, guys.
So this is the last one. But
sure.
Says, COVID mandates are not laws. Mm-hmm. What exactly can someone be arrested for without ORS? Now, I know the answer myself, but I'm going to give this to you.
So, I mean, basically, now there is actually an ORS on the books. Like, if they declare a state of emergency, like when Portland imposed a curfew, it would be a violation of emergency order, and that's an ORS. The other thing, though, too, is it's like if a person's in a grocery store and they're refusing to leave, and the business says, I want them out, they're not going to be arrested for not wearing a mask. It's going to be for trespassing or something along those lines. And that would be one of those things where, and I think that our guys and gals are pretty good about, like, come on, dude, like, you don't want to do this. We don't want to have to do this. Like, please do your shopping elsewhere. You know, if you don't like this policy, like, go somewhere else. Give somebody else your business. You know, but yes.
Yeah.
So it's typically going to be the mask might be the precursor, you know, where they say, hey, you're not following our policies, and they say pound sand, and then it's like, okay, well, now you need to leave, and then they don't want to leave.
Trespassing and stuff. But there's one that there's not a comment, but I want to kind of roll into this one.
Sure.
And it's about the fine that you put out there. If someone is violating the current mandate, supposedly they can get $1,000 fine or $1,500 fine, something like that.
Sure.
What it was. Do you think there's ever going to be a law enforcement officer that's going to write that in this state?
I have not seen, like, throughout my entire experience through this, I've not seen that happen once. Okay. You know, or it was like, you know, if you know, people from other households coming over to your backyard, you need to wear it. Like, no, you don't get to tell me what to do.
Well, this is probably the most confusing mandate we've seen.
Sure.
It's if you're homeless, you don't have to have it.
True.
So everybody should be homeless.
I'm giving a speech right now. So, yes.
if you're homeless, if you're homeless, you don't have it. If you're walking on the street by yourself, you don't have to have it. But if you walk by a group, you have to put one on.
Yeah.
If you're in that group, you have to have it on. If you're walking in the wilderness, you're fine. But if you happen to come upon another group of people, you have to do it there too. And
sure. Or like,
it's so
I go into a restaurant
convoluted.
that's like the size of this, you know, the size of the studio. I walk in, I put it on, I go and I sit down, and I'm like drinking and laughing and spitting all over everybody, and it's fine. I just don't. And that's where I feel for, like I said, especially for restaurants. It just
the science doesn't.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Sorry, Tony. Yes.
The science doesn't line up.
It just, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yes.
No, we've hyped up the story a little bit.
Yeah. Do we have any more?
We don't have any more right now, but
Okay.
this is the point where you get to.
Okay.
And the story has to do with the.
Yes.
thumbnail.
So
I'm gonna leave it at that.
I'm so excited to have Tommy share this story with you. But before I do that, I have to tell you really fast. I used to be a police, and I was never a police officer. I used to be a pastor. The other P, not police officer, but pastor. Yep. We had a guy a guy and his wife come to our church, and I remember our church is really huggy. So I was a huggy pastor. I went up and hugged this police officer, and he never returned to church because. And I didn't know why, so I asked his wife, "Hey, did something happen while you were there?" He goes, "Yeah. Let me tell you, when someone goes up and usually confronts him, they're not giving him a hug. They're wanting to hurt him. The other H, right?
Yeah.
Not a hug, but a hurt.
Sure.
And so I ended up going to that police officer and who attended our church and apologized to him because I felt that it was a very big learning curve for me that, people are not necessarily respectful of your body when they're upset, when they're mad, and when they want to kill.
Yeah.
And so this story actually has a little bit to do with your time in Portland. So I think no one else can tell it like you can. So would you share that with us?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the first time I've actually. So I've shared the story with like close friends, family, that sort of thing. And of course, everybody at my agency knows about it. Lars Larson put out a bunch of stuff and was like trying to get me to come on. I respectfully declined. It's not that I don't care for the show or anything like that, but especially with everything that was going on at that point in time, I was like afraid that I was going to be doxxed. I was going to be followed home. So I didn't want to tell anybody the story.
Right.
You know, I was very concerned for my safety and for the safety of my family.
Absolutely.
And so it was, oh my gosh. How much time do we have?
We're probably good for like 15 minutes or so.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So I'll really kind of have to go back to the beginning because, so after the death of George Floyd, I had been assigned to the rapid response team, but I was assigned to Multnomah County Sheriff's Office team. And so the Gresham team and the county team, we would form up, and we had enough bodies to actually make a whole team.
Okay.
And so we would always work together. We trained together, all that kind of stuff. Really, really super great group of people, by the way. I have a lot of love and respect for those folks. And then also, we would go and we would assist Portland RRT, another great group of people, by the way. So when this thing started kicking off with the George Floyd situation, I was like, I called people at Multnomah County and I was like, hey, I'm starting to notice that there's a little unrest going on throughout the country. Like, do we have any plan? Are we going to deploy? Like, what's the deal?
What's the deal?
And they were like, no, haven't heard anything. Everything's cool. Everything's hunky-dory. Mm-hmm. So myself, I told my guys, I said, hey, just have your stuff. Take it home with you. Have it with you.
Your rapid response stuff.
Yeah, like all of our gear. Like just have it with you, just in case.
Okay, and that all entails the shields and the everything.
Yeah, and so I'm just like, have all your stuff because we don't. I'm like, it's Portland. There's no way that there isn't going to be something going on. You know what I mean? Right. So at about 11:30 that night, I think it was May 29th. May 29th, I got a frantic phone call from one of my partners who works for MCSO, and he's like, you got to get down here. The Justice Center's on fire. They've gotten inside, and my life completely changed from that moment. I ended up going down there the first night. I mean, there was a lot of violence, but it was really quick. There was some issues between, communication between Multnomah County runs the jail, but Portland has the Justice Center, Portland has their central precinct inside the Justice Center. So there was this kind of push-pull over whether or not Portland would go defend the Justice Center or who was going to, it was just, it was a mess. Mm-hmm. So we get there, and then for the next, I don't know how many days, probably 60 plus days, I was down there, working. I would get a day off, here and there to go do something or whatever. But I was
after your work day, you got called out.
Yes, I'd go downtown. And so our mission, mainly was to protect the Justice Center, and then to keep people away from the building because not only do we have a ton of civilian staff and people that work inside the Justice Center, we also have a ton of inmates that need to be protected, and you can't have that place burning down. So. It was absolute craziness. The first several nights, we had literally thousands of people out in front of the Justice Center, surrounding Central Precinct, in the parks across the street, from the Justice Center. Downtown was getting destroyed. You did have some groups of people. It was interesting too because standing there those first couple of days, there was definitely you could see it in the crowd, the tension in terms of those who wanted to be peaceful and those who wanted to just burn everything down. And especially too at nightfall, things would get super rowdy. We would have things thrown at us. We would have, rocks, bottles. People would be like, oh, it's just a water bottle. Oh, no. Water bottles filled, full water bottles, frozen water bottles filled with batteries, pebbles, urine, feces, anything you can imagine. People would take those. I don't know if you remember as a kid, but those slingshots where one person stands on each side and then you stand back, launching rocks this big. We had rocks penetrate the Justice Center. Yeah. These thick glass and boarding and everything, and they were penetrating the inside of the Justice Center. It was insane. At one point, they had put up a fence around the Justice Center. It was a couple days into it. And I remember, as the day went on, the crowd just got more and more hostile and more angry. And you could just feel it. And people are they're threatening your lives. They're taking your photograph. They're, threatening your family. They're going to follow you home. It just goes on and on and on and on. And it's that's why I think RRT was so tight because it's you and in our case, maybe 50 people tops, and then thousands of people, and you're just taking this in for hours at a time. And
Tommy, do you ever get to a place where you're desensitized or tune it out, or do you always hear it?
It's interesting, and actually, I can speak to that a little bit. For the first part of this too, they didn't give us any type of communication systems. We just had our earpieces for our microphones.
Yeah.
And so you would crank your mic up, and so you would hear commands, like, so it was like deafening because you have this crowd that's screaming at you, but then you have like this deafening noise because you have to hear what's going on, what command wants you to do, or like what the plan is. And so then you would, so the noise is like super loud. Over time, it was so funny because I would come home, I would fall asleep, and I would still hear the noise. You know what I mean? I would just hear it, and I'd hear it, and I'd hear it. And so finally, somebody was like, you guys need some actual like communications sets. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we got SWAT's old ones, the
Yes.
hand-me-downs, but hey, it was fine because we were able to like, I could literally like turn down the volume, completely shut out the crowd, and just hear what I needed to hear.
Oh,
And
so,
so
it,
that
it
was-
was like noise canceling.
Oh my God, that made a huge difference.
Wow.
So, but before all that happened, like I said, on this particular day, it was hotter than hell. People were getting super aggravated. The fence was up, and it just got to a point where this crowd really worked itself into a fever pitch. The fence started to come down. They're coming towards the Justice Center. We're getting stuff thrown at us, and there's nowhere for us to go. The only thing we can do is try to rally up really quick and retreat into the building. But the thing is, we can't let anybody into that building. So we're throwing smoke, gas, whatever we can. And we're still getting stuff lobbed at us, and people are coming at us. And then it was so crazy because I'm standing on the front steps of the Justice Center on the portico, and all of a sudden this object comes flying through the air, and like I'll never forget it. It comes flying through the air, and it hits my chest, and I catch on fire. And I'm like overcome with smoke. My gas mask gets breached. I can't see a damn thing, and I'm really disoriented, and because we didn't really have any communications, like I had nothing to project on my gas mask, and my partners didn't have it either. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, and my chest is on fire, and my good buddy he's now a sergeant at MCSO, he's screaming at me, but he's got his gas mask on, and I can't hear an effing word that he's saying, but he's going,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
And he's like, oh my goodness.
And so, like, the next thing I know, people are grabbing onto me, and they're ripping all my gear off, and they drag me into the Justice Center, and I kind of fall to my knees, and I'm kind of like realizing what had happened, but they're like, dude, you were on fire, and I was just like, and it was so funny because all I can say was, I'm sorry. I got taken offline. And that's all I could tell them was like, that's the only thing I remember saying to these guys was like, I'm sorry. And they're like, what the hell are you sorry for? And I just said, I got to get back out there. And they're like, oh, no, you're not going back out there. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going, just give me a minute. And I took, I was able to kind of clear the smoke from my eyes and everything else. And I went back out there, and then it was just relentless. And it was frustrating. It was sad. It was leadership. There was just a ton of push-pull in terms of leadership. Every day was something different.
I just want to take a minute.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You just told us you were literally on fire.
Yep.
And you have the dedication and the fortitude and the will desire to do your job to protect the people that need to protect. That you took a minute, you geared back up, and you went right back out into the hell.
Yep.
So let's add a little caveat to it. And they were prisoners as well as other people.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
You were protecting.
You were protecting prisoners.
Yep.
Yep.
But you were on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you projected that forward.
Yeah.
I want to make a point of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that you're not the only one like this.
Oh God, no.
People need to hear this, and the reason why they need to hear this is they need to understand the type of people that tend to serve in law enforcement. And that does not come from an alpha personality. That does not come from a racist or whatever other type of horrible things that they've called law enforcement. That comes from someone who has a heart, a desire to do their job and to serve. Nothing else. They can't come from anything else. Because you had every opportunity to go, wow, I can step out of this. Yeah, peace, I'm done. I just got set on fire,
Yes.
But you went back out there because you have that in you. And I want people to understand that is what a law enforcement officer is.
So to go piggyback off
Yes,
of what
please.
you were just saying about the races, we need to stop it. We need to stop it. I have an opportunity to know this guy. Just met him a couple of months ago, and had a chance to just do life with him. And there's not one bit of racism in him. Mm-hmm. And so we just need to stop putting every apple into one basket. We need to stop it.
Exactly. And these people that serve this way is what they want to defund you. They want to take your protections away. Mm-hmm. They want to take your guns away. They want to take your paycheck away.
Yep. Yeah.
And they want to make it hard for you when you are standing, whether it's criminal or whether it's innocent civilian. Yep. You are standing between the aggression force and the force that needs that protection.
Yeah.
You are the line in between that, and people need to see and understand that.
Yeah.
So, we do have 2 questions
Sure.
that they have begged me to ask, and these are just some are connected and some are not.
Okay.
So, I'm going to take them out of order, but police have remained the level ground through this. Not sure how, but thank you.
That's true.
And this right here is
it's
a
proof.
Perfect example.
Yes.
And it's the fortitude. So it's fortitude.
Yeah.
For that presses them through it.
Well, didn't I tell you this is all vodka? This isn't water.
Well, actually,
you deserve it.
Yeah.
You deserve it.
I think it's time.
It's flammable. Says our producer. Vodka is flammable.
Yes.
I gotta say, it's time we carry water for you.
Yeah.
It's time we carry water for the man.
Yeah.
Right on.
When I say the man, I mean
Awesome.
law enforcement.
I get
Yes.
it. Yep.
So
yes.
Cool.
it's time we carry water for the man.
What a good slogan there.
So the last thing on here, completely unrelated, but I want to make sure it gets asked.
Sure.
Our audience has asked us. Do you think Governor Brown is going to impose shutdown mandates in restaurants, etc. again? I think she will. I think it's her goal.
Man, I don't. So it's politically, I think it's really interesting. I know that she's going to endorse Tina Kotek. I think that this would be political suicide for her to do that at this point. So go ahead.
She's not even going to be in next year.
She's not, but the thing is, I mean, they have the same political ideology, and I think that they want to keep that going.
You don't think everything up until now is in political suicide as it's been?
Well, but
including Portland.
Well, but that's the thing, though, is it's kind of, like I said, kind of going back to where we were before, where it's just kind of like people forget really quickly, or they just kind of fall in line and they'll kind of continue on and put up with it. So I think that and this is just my opinion, I think that they want to be able to come out of this and say, hey, we've defeated this, we win, and look at the great job we did. And, because if you look at, in terms of infection and everything else with this Delta variant, I mean, and like, if you look at the numbers last year in terms of, and then, if you compare the numbers from last year to this year, cases are way up. You know what I mean? So how come they're not shutting things down? How come they're not doing these things? I think that we're going into 2022 here fairly in short order, and I think that she wants to put her next person in the governor's seat. That's my prediction.
Exactly. So I just had a kind of a whim of something I'd like to do. So if you hold on with me 1 second, I'm going to let you talk to Tony. I'm going to step off camera for a second.
Cool.
So while we're off camera, you completed your story, but did you ever? My question is, how did you end the night?
Oh my gosh. Man, that was. I mean, we ultimately that night a riot was declared. It actually was declared a couple times. And I think we got done at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. We hopped on the rails and headed back to Southeast Precinct. Took our gear off. I went home. I took a nap, and I came back the next day and did it all over again.
You came back the next day.
Oh yeah. It was
so resilient.
It was nuts.
It was nuts.
It was bananas.
Yes.
So, there are people out there who appreciate you, respect you. Obviously, we're part of that. There's a comment in here that says, "Blue line is the wall between good and evil," and thank you. Last year, a good, amazing person here in Estacada. She does something called heart attacks, and last year she a heart attack at Gresham Police Department.
Oh, awesome!
Did you ever see?
I did.
Hearts? Yeah,
yes.
that's her name's Bryden.
Awesome.
So she's from out here, and
Very
so
cool.
she heart attacked that. So,
Nice. I love it.
I just wanted that's a comment I wanted to make sure that we put on there. So she says be safe, and asked if they need another heart attack to boost them up.
Anytime. Yep, we're always up for it. Always up for that kind of heart attack.
So what I wanted to do was, I mentioned this before. This is for our fallen and our injured soldiers in Afghanistan, but there are another kind of soldier, and that is a soldier here in our own country. That is people that are on the front line every day, and unlike a soldier who fights over foreign war, when they go home, they leave that battlefield. Law enforcement is on that battlefield when they go home and when they come back. They don't leave the battlefield.
Absolutely.
And you can see it is a battlefield. You just tell us how you were set on fire. So, on behalf of Backwoods Brothers, I would like to offer you the opportunity to place a bottle for all your injured and lost brothers in blue upon the shelf there, wherever you feel like is deemed as
perfect.
Looks good. But you'll be placing it there for all the other officers.
Let's go right here.
And on behalf of all the other officers, this is
cool. Thank
this
you.
is a beer for them.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Tony.
What can you say with that one? George, I don't know if you threw up that picture, but there's a picture of you, speaking of that, kneeling down, by the way, and handing a girl a doll. And could you tell us that story a little bit?
Oh, sure. That was like a few weeks back. It was an accident at 165th and Stark. We have a program at the Gresham Police Department. Actually, I should do a shout out. I cannot remember the gal's name. But she runs our Buddy Bears and Blankets program. Yeah. And so they make these incredible blankets, and then they'll go out and they'll get teddy bears or like stuffed animals or whatever, and they wrap them up. And so whenever we're on any type of scene that's traumatic or anything like that, we typically will hand those out. And so this little girl had just been in an accident with her mom. And she was super sweet. She was a little upset, obviously, given the nature of the circumstances. But yes, we presented her with a Buddy Bear and blanket at that traffic crash.
So when you see that thumbnail, know that there's two stories connected in that one thumbnail, thanks to George. It's the fire that you set on fire, the story you just heard, and you showing your heart on top of your big heart already to a little girl who just went through a trauma.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing that I want people to realize. I think if I could really drive one point home, and like you had mentioned, like law enforcement, it's this career, and I think that what it comes down to, it's death by 1,000 cuts. You know what I mean? A lot of people can suffer, and I'm not saying, like, trauma's trauma, and I'm not trying to say that, like, ours is better or worse or anything else, but it's just, like, over time, man, like, it builds up. And then also, too, it's just, like, I've had to say, this is my favorite line, and I've used it 1,000 times throughout the course of my career, when I'll have people kind of go off from time to time, which obviously that's what I do, like, that's okay. But, like, what I want people to understand, what they need to understand is, like, I'm not a robot.
Yes.
None of us are.
Yes.
And you don't want a robot when you're interacting with somebody, so yeah.
Definitely.
I'm not a robot.
We are actually kind of past our time here quite a bit. So I wanted to give you a chance. Is there anything else you wanted to share on behalf of yourself or law enforcement or anything else that you can speak from?
Sure.
You'd like to share with the rest of everybody else?
If I could say anything, it's just that we know that there is a community out there that supports us, and I want to take the opportunity to thank the community because, like, we see you, we hear you, we respect you. I can't tell you how many people, especially in the Gresham community, have they'll literally stop me in traffic and they'll be like, "Thank you so much for what you do," and it's just and that means a ton. You know what I mean? It's just so yeah, we're very fortunate, working where we work out there. Like I said, kind of starting off, things are a little weird right now. We're in transition. They're kind of tough, but things are tough all over, and we'll get through it. So
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, we really appreciate you coming out and
Anytime.
being on the show. And do you have anything you wanted to close out on there before we?
No, just, you know what? The last word is the last word. Thank you for being on with us.
Anytime.
Thanks, and always remember, guys, start a conversation. That shows off here in a second. Yeah, so.